The strongest sorcerer of the Edo period will face off in this video, as the supposed strongest of his time that lived a full life, Kashimo, is put up against a newcomer from the end of his life, Ryu Ishigori. Both characters will obviously be taken from the Culling games as they're at the height of their power while retaining their experience and knowledge. Starting with Kashimo, he was definitely just the strongest out of anyone alive at his prime. This could, not definitely though, include Kenjaku and his host at the time, although Kenny admits himself he's not fit for combat at the time. Physically, he's shown significant high-end relativity to Jackpaw Hikari, even being stronger and faster generally. This being a Hikari who should be functioning as absolute best, since the unlimited curse energy given by Jackpot would allow Hikari to be constantly reinforcing his body with his maximum output. This Hikari, whom has shown no real implication of getting stronger by Shinjuku, and he's one of the few characters not shown to have trained, can battle relative to Urame for the entire raid battle on Sukuna. Urame at this point being at the very least above a Culling Games Yuji, and can at the very least fully restrain a fully realized Maki. So Kashimo having what I would consider a better performance against Hikari means he should just upscale Urame's showings as well. Kashimo's curse energy also has electric properties, which allows him to effectively still stun an opponent, regardless of if they are using curse energy reinforcement or not. His curse energy trait also makes him resistant to any electric-based attacks. Not only this, but by landing multiple hits on his opponent, he can build electrical charge in them, allowing him to effectively use a lightning bolt rod, granting him a sure hit lightning bolt even without the use of a domain expansion. On the topic of domain expansion, while Kashimo does not possess one himself, he does have a counter to it in the form of a hollow wicker basket. Although it isn't the most reliable anti-domain attack, it is something worth considering. And given that he doesn't have to fulfill the condition of a hand sign, Kashimo could likely use his staff as a lightning rod, similarly to how he did against Hikari, and break a domain with the lightning bolt from outside. Now, while in character this would never happen, let's hypothetically grant Kashimo Mythical Beast Amber as sort of a second round. Now, due to Mythical Beast Amber, he's more agile, but agile given the kanji used has a different connotation than simply being more fluid mobility. The kanji used is actually the same that's used in reference to the dog sport agility, which is essentially going through an obstacle course at high speeds. So effectively, rather than what you generally think of as agility, Kashimo's actual perception and combat speed increases, which would make sense considering the explanation for his increased agility. I tried translating the section on Kashimo surpassing the human realm as well, but it came to no avail and I couldn't find a real specific implied meaning based on the kanji. But assuming the statement is meant to be taken at face value, Kashimo is definitely cut above most normal sorcerers. Kashimo being able to utilize electromagnetic waves goes beyond simply taking advantage of them in the pre-existing condition too, seeing as he can manipulate them into allowing him to have something similar to X-ray vision, this being implied to allow him to see the flow of curse energy at the beginning of chapter 238, similarly to what the Byakugan allows the Hyuga to see in Naruto. Now we go on to Ryu Ishigori, a complete anomaly output-wise. He has numerous statements just saying he has the highest curse energy output in the Culling games, and even has one from the Edo period stating he has the highest output ever recorded, which could even encompass the Heian era, seeing as things like Sukuna's achievements are just normal history to sorcerers, even sorcerers from the Edo period. And while yes, I am implying this could apply to sorcerers like Yorozu and Heian era Sukuna, both of these characters are just stronger now in the modern era, so I don't think it's that far-fetched to just say he has better output. Now no, I'm not saying that Ryu is overall superior to Sukuna from 1,000 years ago, just that his overall CE output is superior. What makes Ryu's output all the more impressive is it requires no charge up nor utilization of his actual curse technique, and has maximum output without any time to charge. This is insane, as just on a whim, with no build up, he's sending out the strongest attacks we've seen in this arc up until the Kenny vs Yuki fight. Ryu's insane curse energy output isn't limited to just powerful beam attacks either. His reinforcement can even beat that of Yuta off the 5-minute timer easily. Even Rika, who is easily top 5 in the series for durability and endurance, can hardly tank a full force punch from Ryu, even while she's fully manifested. Some may try to argue Yuta, and in turn Rika, also were holding back against Ryu, but while I definitely understand where they're coming from, there's just a very easy explanation. There's a difference between actively holding back your physical stats and output, and suppressing your lethality. All the sources for the Yuta holding back argument simply apply to the latter, as the reason people argue he was holding back is due to statements of not going for the kill to get their points instead. But not only this, but Ryu is just stated verbatim to have his output still be significantly stronger than a charged up love beam. And this is from the narrator as well, as just consistent statements for elsewhere that constantly support him having the highest output in the Culling games as mentioned before. So no, Yuta wasn't like secretly holding back and could beat Ryu's ass at any point. He simply didn't want to kill Ryu. But that doesn't stop him from incapacitating him, which he clearly didn't do until the end of the fight. Ryu's durability is also just absolutely absurd, considering he can just walk off his own Granite Blast and then continue fighting at maximum output for another 5 minutes straight. He can also tank a cleave from 15-finger Sukuna, with Sukuna having the intent to kill, which is consistent with Sukuna stating himself that the fighters after Gojo have yet to show durability on the level of Ryu when he was fighting Yuta. Now, this statement could apply to Rika too, but I feel as though that's just ratty, as Shinjuku Rika straight up face tanks the World Slash, which is batshit and unreasonable to assume for Ryu. Speed-wise, he was obviously relative to Yuta even during the 5 minutes, and although this may cause a little controversy, there's only really two ways to interpret one of the points I mentioned prior. Essentially, when Sukuna goes to slash Ryu, either one, his raw durability without utilizing a CE is strong enough that he can tank it, or two, his reflexive use of Curse Energy, similarly to what Nanami and Todo did against Mahito, is fast enough to just counter a surprise cleave from 15-finger Sukuna. Now, why I say these are the only two real possibilities rather than Ryu simply already protecting himself with Curse Energy is because of Ryu directly already just going for an attack. Basically, Ryu just confronted this mystery man who he knows nothing about and went to deck him. There would be no grounds for him to be bracing for a giant slash across his chest, especially because of things like cleave only needing a touch rather than a full-on actual attack. So Ryu's guard simply wouldn't be up beforehand. You don't go to punch someone and already brace like you're about to get your chest caved in. Ryu also has a domain expansion, but his domain expansion has no real feats, so other than being unquantifiably above his normal Granite Blasts and giving him the same amp, we have nothing to really show for it. Now, how would these two combatants interact? Well, speed-wise, they should be pretty relative, although I would definitely give Ryu the edge. Ryu in combat was faster than Yuta in their scuffle without the ring, while Hikari by the end of his fight with Kashimo began to overwhelm the God of Thunder. This is important to note as at least base Yuta and Hikari, when he's on a roll, should be relative. But what does this actually mean for Hikari to be on a roll? Well, while the statement is put into question by Maki, I think it is worth noting that Yuta could be referring to his base, in which Maki is referring to Yuta as max power, which could make a lot of sense considering Yuta is known to be very humble, and very clearly Hikari and Yuta have a great amount of respect for each other, as shown with constantly complimenting each other's powers and saying they're superior to themselves. With other statements comparing the two and implying a level of relativity, I think it's honestly pretty safe to say Hikari is relative to a base Yuta, so Ryu has the edge in speed against base Kashimo, but with NBA Kashimo, it's probably a bit faster, just due to narrative shit, even though we're being generous here, because if we're being strictly speaking, then Mythical Beast Amber is unquantifiable, so you can't argue 100% that it does clearly get. But now that's kind of where any level of relativity ends. As in other categories, Ishigori just wins. AP-wise, Ryu is just verbatim stated to be a superior numerous amount of times, and giving Hikari a very big benefit of the doubt, he scales to base Yuta in raw AP when both are using CE reinforcement. So Ryu is still just outclassing, and saying Hikari even beats Yuta in Curse Energy reinforced AP is more generous than donating to charity. Because not only does Yuta have the insane scaling chains I mentioned in my Yuta vs Toji video, but similarly to NBA Kashimo, the actual translation of this popular scan is being second to Satoru Gojo in superpowers, or being beyond the abilities of normal humans. And this is just base Yuta. Kenjaku, someone who very confidently downplays Yuta, also agrees with Yuta being their second strongest, this being after Gojo is released. Kenjaku would have no way of knowing the training going on in the 1 month, since he couldn't leave Suguna's side, so he would be basing his observations off the events of the Culling games. With Ryu tanking his own Granite Blast, Kashimo could legit do nothing to truly damage him, as Granite Blast definitively has higher output than anything Kashimo has in his arsenal in base, and NBA, as I said earlier, isn't the most quantifiable, and has no actual AP feats on Sukuna, other than when he's about to fall over and die. Durability-wise, Kashimo just can't really take a hit here, since he gets injured pretty regularly by Hikari's punches, which are at best relative to or inferior to base Yuta's, which are in turn vastly inferior to his full charge Love Beam with the ring, and fully manifest his Rika, which is still inferior to Granite Blast. So if Kashimo gets hit even like once, regardless of if he's in base or NBA, he's getting the equivalent to a normal dude getting punched by Prime Mike Tyson in the jaw. And yeah, NBA isn't changing shit, because NBA has no implications or statements to support him getting more durable. And just narratively, he should actually be getting less durable over the course of a fight, considering his body is falling apart. But before I address the final argument for Kashimo doing really anything, I want to address something a viewer brought up in the comment section of one of my posts. Kenjaku implies old dying Kashimo would be a match for Prime Ryu, who is pressing Yuta. But not really. Not really any of this is accurate. Kenjaku states that there's someone with the highest cursed energy output ever located in the Date province, in context using this mysterious person, who we know as Ryu, as a challenge for Kashimo to attempt to satisfy him. Kenjaku, for one, never states or implies it would be a close match or anything, nor would he even have the authority to do as such, since he doesn't actually know shit about Ryu at this point, other than what to him and Kashimo is simply another rumor, as Kashimo said. And this isn't even really Prime Ryu either, going off the assumption that all fighters are brought back in their primes, which just makes sense considering, for example, Kashimo is brought back in the prime of his life rather than as an old man, because we see that Ryu just very obviously looks much different in the flashback. Therefore, it's a different time in his life, and isn't provably in his prime either. Finally, Kashimo's electric cursed energy rate, which is, as I saw in a specific debate, getting overrated here. As the statement goes, Kashimo's cursed energy can shock the opponent regardless of if they have cursed energy reinforcement or not. But after their output passes a certain threshold, his trait gets no real effect. Now, the argument as to why Ryu would get affected by this is because, unlike Hikari, he can't have his cursed energy reinforcement at that level for an extended period of time. But that's just stupid. Let's see. Ryu uses Granite Blast 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, domain expansion, 7, 8, 9 times. And that's not even counting the times he shows reinforced punches capable of one-shotting or damaging people who can palm Granite Blast, or where he just tanks Granite Blast himself. So no, Ryu has no problem keeping his cursed energy and reinforcement and output at a high level consistently. Ryu has absurd cursed energy reserves or efficiency, and he was doing this for at least over 5 minutes straight, as the fight started like a chapter before you to put on the ring, and ended a few pages after the ring's duration ended. Which, while that's not as long as Hikari and Kashimo's fight, it's still plenty long for this matchup, and unlike Kashimo and Hikari, he was just constantly doing high output attacks, so he was draining his cursed energy pool much more often. So yeah, that's just about it. I'll see you guys later this week with Dreyfus versus Hendrickson, I guess, and see you all and have a great rest of your day.